Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2022 horror black comedy, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Brett for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, this is one of those movies that I had my eye on after seeing the trailer. I thought it looked like it could be fun. I thought it had some potential. I like the style and the flair, and I like the concept of it. I'm a big fan of black comedies, and ultimately, I didn't mind this movie. I know why a lot of people aren't into this. I even understand why people really don't like this movie at all because it is a very grating film. These characters are deliberately made to be as obnoxious as possible most of the time, and I can understand why that's a little too much for people. But I guess I just got into the plot. I got into the humor. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of black comedy and dark humor, and I thought this had some genuinely funny moments of black comedy. The reveal at the end was genuinely surprising, and it had me laughing my ass off. I actually thought the twist was clever. I can understand why some people would look at the twist and be pissed off, but I thought it was just really witty and hilarious. But yeah, it's one of those movies where I get why people aren't a fan of it, but I didn't mind it. Now, I'm not going to say that I loved the film or anything, but I liked it all right. I would say I liked it as a time waster. It's directed by Halina Reijn, and this is her English language debut as a director. And I thought her direction for the kind of film that this is, and with the limitations that she deliberately chose for the film, I thought it looked pretty good. I thought the director had a good sense of style, good sense of movement, and there was some nice dynamic and verve and energy throughout the film. It matched a lot of the just high energy of these characters, and a lot of it is shot in very dark rooms because it's happening during the majority of the film is happening during a hurricane party with the lights off. So the scenes are mostly illuminated by people's phones or other forms of lighting, and that can make some things kind of look murky visually, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't see anything, and I felt that the director handled a difficult situation well. She's the one that chose this. She chose this task. She chose to shoot this film mostly in dark rooms with not a lot of light. So she decided to take that risk, and for the most part, I think it looks good. I actually think that the choice to shoot it that way really does make the film have this unique look to it, especially when it comes to the way that she plays around with the lighting and shadow, and just works that through the film visually. It's not a film that has a lot of crazy camera work in it, but there are a few moments where she does try to do a little bit more than just your average director. And those moments I thought were pulled off rather well too. And I thought she got some good performances out of her cast. If you found these characters annoying and irritating and you hated them, well, that was the intent. And that means that she got a good, genuine performance out of this cast. Now, the script is by Sarah Delappy, and it's based on a story by Kristen Arupianian. And here's the thing about this script. The concept, I think, is great. The idea of a group of young adults going to a hurricane party, playing a game of bodies, 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 and then it turns deadly, and then it becomes like a take on And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. It becomes that kind of film. And it's like a thriller and a whodunit and this whole mystery of like who's the killer until the final reveal at the end, which I will talk about it, but I'll definitely warn people who haven't seen the movie yet when I start to talk about the ending. Um, but yeah, I like the concept. I think it's a good setup, and I don't mind the idea of a lot of these characters being obnoxious, irritating caricatures of Gen Z. But I think it lacks one central character that is more likable, a more engaging character outside of a caricature. And I think that's the main element that this film is missing. Because when you have all these characters and they are these caricatures of like the worst nature of Gen Z and the worst personality of Gen Z teens and young adults, it becomes rather tiresome. At first, it might feel a little fresh, but then it gets stale the more they focus on it and the more that it becomes uh, the um, the focus of the entire film. So when you have all these characters that are just being obnoxious and irritating and annoying, and you don't really have that one character to kind of balance things out, I definitely feel that that's a problem with this story and with this script. I know they're trying to have be that character, but it just didn't really work for me in that way. I don't think they really pulled that off. And that is really one of the biggest problems that I have with this script is that you just don't have that one central character that balances out the craziness. Because I don't mind pretty much all of the other stuff. I like the twists in terms of what happens throughout the film when it comes to different reveals. I like the sense of humor. I like the ending. I actually do like the ending. I think the ending is honestly pretty excellent. And I think it's some of the most clever uh, black humor that I've seen in a long time. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's not it's not quite as satisfying as it could be because of some missing elements. Another thing, I think that the attempts to try to be more suspenseful and tense and scary, I think those are elements within the script that could have been improved upon as well, because a lot of it just doesn't really have that same feel, doesn't have that scary feel to it. It just kind of feels more like a comedy, and it almost seems like these characters are just running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and it's all just mad drama all the time. And there are moments where that can get old and can get annoying in its own right. So I think it would have been a lot more helpful if there were some moments where it just kind of leans a little more heavily into the horror, into the paranoia of what these characters are going through in terms of them dying right and left. Um, and I don't know how they would necessarily do that considering what they were going for, which is they're being killed off by their own stupidity. But I think there could have been something that they might have been able to put in there to kind of provide a little bit more of a genuine feel of dread or suspense or terror. But as it is, it's not a bad script to me. I think it's just missing some elements. And like I said, I'm going to go into spoilers here. The ending for me, I thought it was brilliant. I laughed my ass off. The reveal is that the whole start of this massacre at this hurricane party and during this game of bodies, bodies, bodies is because one of these characters, I'm cracking up just thinking about it. So you had this character named David, who's played by Pete Davidson, and he's such a moron that he kills himself by trying to do some trick for TikTok with a machete. He's trying to like do some kind of dance and like flip the machete in the air and do some kind of nonsense, and he winds up cutting his own throat. And that's the start of this whole craziness throughout this script and throughout this story. The girls at the party, they assume that it's some kind of killer that killed David. And then they try to figure out who it is among them. And throughout the story, they wind up killing themselves in various different ways, accidentally or on purpose because they think that someone is a killer and they're trying to defend themselves. But it all started because David was being a dumbass and wanted to make a viral video. And the just sheer inane ridiculousness of that also ties into the last sequence where B and her friend Sophie, they're fighting over a phone because B's trying to find the truth about Sophie and some kind of drama that's going on, and they eventually, it's one of those things where B gets the phone and then finds the truth and essentially figures out what the T is, so to speak. And then there's this guy, this I think it's like some guy. I think it might have been a cop or something. So you have this. Okay, it's Max actually. Yeah, because they're staying at this guy's. I think they're staying at this guy's house. Yeah, Max left after a flight with David. So Max was a guest, but he left earlier. And but he shows up at the end of the movie. He sees B and Sophie, and they're covered in blood and they're wet, and it just seems like they've been through hell, and he's wondering what the fuck is going on. And the last shot, the last scene is B holding up her phone and saying, "I have service now." And that's like the end of the movie. And I know there are people who hate that. I loved it. It killed me. I thought it was hilarious. I laughed my ass off. It was so unexpected, but it was great. It was a great, just savage rip on Gen Z and just the vapid nature of a lot of these Gen Z teens and young adults. They're just so obsessed with their social media and their phones, all this other shit that that's like the first thing that comes to their mind after everything that they've been through is I have service now. It just kills me. I thought it was hilarious. And that coupled with Pete Davidson's character being a dumbass and killing himself, that was just the icing on the cake. Um, but yeah, I like I said, I think the script is actually pretty good, but could have had a better like lead, maybe flesh out some things with B, make her a little bit more likable, make her a little bit more engaging in some ways, make her a little bit more different from the others, and kind of beef up a little bit of the horror, a little bit of the suspense, a little bit of the tension. Not rely have so heavily upon the drama between the girls or the um, dark comedy. Because I could see why some people would watch this and get the wrong idea because they're like, wait a second, like this isn't a slasher movie. It isn't. It's more of a horror black comedy. It's not really a slasher film. Now, the film features, in my opinion, a pretty good cast as well. I mean, you got Amandla Stenberg, who plays Sophie, Maria Bakalova, who plays B, Myha'la Herrold, who plays Jordan, Chase Sui Wonders as Emma, Rachel Sennott as Alice. She steals the show. Uh, I thought she was really funny. I really did laugh quite often when it comes to the scenes with her. Um, and there's also another actor. You have a Lee Pace who plays this guy named Greg, who's kind of like this sort of boy toy character who's like an older guy who's going with one of these girls. So he can go to the party and get some free drinks and food and also some sex and so on and drugs and whatever. It's also kind of insinuated that he's loaded, so he's kind of like a sugar daddy. um Pete Davidson from SNL, he plays David. um I thought he was pretty funny too. um And I thought the girls, they had some good chemistry initially. When it comes to them being together, you could kind of buy that, at least the main core group of these girls, you could buy that they're friends or they've been longtime friends. And B is just kind of this outsider. So I think she pulled that off too. I will say B, played by Maria Bakalova, her performance is a little bit more stilted and kind of uneven compared to the other actresses. Um, Kind of showed that she wasn't in a lot of things or didn't really have a lot of prior experience prior to doing this movie. At least not when it comes to like an American production. The other actresses, I thought they held their own better, and so did like Lee Pace and his character. He's another character I didn't mention him when I was talking about the script because he's like one of the characters in the film that is kind of close to being just a normal guy, but they don't really do a lot with him in terms of the script. So I think that's kind of a wasted opportunity in some aspects. Um, but yeah, the performances for what they're asked to do. They're asked to be these vapid, self-centered characters, and I think they pull that off. They are also asked to be frantic and just desperate and just crazed and just totally confused about what's going on when everybody starts dying, and I feel that they pull that off too. It's very authentic in terms of the emotions that these actresses present throughout the film. And overall, yeah, I thought it did. It did have a good cast and some good performances. The cinematography by Jasper Wolf, for what this film is, it's decent. It's there. It's not anything that's amazing, but it's average. It's definitely something that works for this film in terms of trying to get the most out of a little, because there's just a lot of scenes in this movie that are just shot in dark rooms with only just a little bit of lighting. So there's only so much you can do with that. But prior to that, I think the cinematography in the mansion was nice. I thought the cinematographer, did a good job showcasing the luxury and just how nice the place was. I think the scene during the hurricane, when you have some of the characters going outside and going out in the rain, I thought that was shot well. Um, and even like the ending when the hurricane is past and Sophie and B are fighting over that phone. I thought the way that that scene was shot was also uh, good. Um, but it's not one of those things where, because of the fact that there's just so much of the film that's in dark rooms with not a lot of light, there's really not a lot that you can show in terms of cinematography to really make you go, wow, like that shot was impressive, or that was particularly incredible. There's just a lot of stuff that looked fine, looked good enough. The editing is kind of a similar thing by Taylor Levy and Julia Bloch. Um, I will say this: I think the editing is definitely something that is it's better than I think some people might give it credit for, because of the fact that there is a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of different sort of craziness happening throughout the movie, and I think the wrong editor can make it have the wrong tone, can make it feel a little too silly or zany, but I never really felt that with this movie. Like I feel that there could have been more moments of tension, but I think that kind of ties into the fact that I'm not really that engaged with a lot of these annoying characters. Like, I don't care whether they live or die. I'm just kind of waiting for them to die because they're so irritating. So I think the editor could have easily just kind of took a lazy route there because these characters are so obnoxious and who gives a shit, or the editor could have just been a little bit too over the top. And I feel the editors, they found they found a good balance when it comes to the tone. The music is by Disaster Piece. I like the score. It was very synth heavy, very um, almost like something you would hear in a rave. Had a very party feel to it, and that's fitting because it takes place during a hurricane party. So I think the score works with the film, and I think it works with it well. I feel the same way about the music choices when it comes to certain songs that they use for the film. And yeah, I think it's a decently paced film too. I mean, there are some moments where it kind of slows down a little bit once the game of bodies starts. David is found dead, and then they kind of just start the whole "and then there were none" Gen Z version. There are some moments where it kind of can get a little dull, because it's just a lot of these characters arguing with one another, and just this drama that's just constantly in your face over and over again, when really what what would have been better is just maybe just some moments where they're not ranting and not yelling at each other and not screaming and not doing all this, and it just doesn't just become this cacophony of noise. um Maybe have some moments of genuine character building and depth, and I think they try to do that with some of these characters, but there's just so much bitching that it just kind of falls flat on your ears sometimes, or you just don't quite get it. And I think that's just because there's just so much shit going on, so much drama and tea being spilled. And they kind of get away from that and focus more on their own stupidity killing them, then I think it starts to pick up some pace. Also, when it comes to trying to have this whole who the killer is and so on. And there are some moments where I think it does a good job making you think that there really is a killer, and it's not just something that's happening because they're just dumbasses, because of the fact that there's some of the behavior by some of these characters could be perceived as being something that is potentially murderous, or one of those things where you can see the character possibly committing the crime because of just the way that they're acting. And so once the film kind of goes into that route, it gets better when it comes to its pacing. And then, of course, you get to the ending, which I thought, I still think that ending is great. I know a lot of people don't like that ending, and I get it. I understand. A lot of the time, when it comes to the films like this, that kind of ending would normally piss me off. But I guess because of the fact that I, for one, didn't expect it, and two, I knew that it was a comedy, then it wasn't really something that bothered me as much. So, like, if this was played straight and this was like a serious, dramatic horror thriller and it's not a black comedy, then that ending would not work at all. But this was clearly a black comedy from the very beginning of the movie, and I got that vibe very early on. So that ending didn't really hurt the film. It actually, in a lot of ways, is why the film is a time waster for me. Why I can deal with the insufferable, annoying, idiotic characters is because of that ending. Because it all builds up to that. And I feel it's just a nice sort of bow on top. That, doesn't necessarily cover up all of the bullshit, but makes it something that is a little bit more palatable on the eyes and the ears, because it's just one of those things where, yeah, I can still smell it, still smell the bullshit, because there's a lot of things in this film that I think could have been better. But that ending, man, that that was pretty good. So it's one of those things where it doesn't quite 100% make up for its flaws, but it definitely does make it into something that I could say that I liked. Didn't love, but I could still say that I liked this film because of the ending of the movie. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say about Bodies, except thanks for watching my review. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.